Desmond Bane got traded in the middle of the NBA Finals, and NBA Draft is coming up. We got Nick Thomas from Draftstack here. Let's get into foul trouble.
Let's go. It's been too long since we've had a guest. Thank you so much for coming on, Nick.
Oh, man.
Nick is in Australia, so we've got him up in the middle of the night to record. That's dedication right there.
Oh man, I can't wait to be here. I've been really excited all week. I can't wait to talk NBA draft, talk Bane.
Yeah, we're gonna start with the Bane trade because Patrick and I are talking off camera, and I totally didn't realize teams could just make these big trades during the NBA Finals. Something feels a little not kosher about that to me.
I mean, even the Pacers are making trades when they're literally in the finals right now.
I know. Well, what if the Pacers wanted to trade for Desmond Bane? Is this like are they allowed to now?
The rest of the guys just got to sit on the bench with a Grizzlies jersey underneath.
Can you imagine? It's like they're down 3-2 right now, and they're like, all right, we're going to trade 5 first-round picks for LeBron James just to get this one ring and call it a day.
I mean, I think that's great theater right there. But, so, we're kind of burying the lead. The Memphis Grizzlies acquire Desmond Bane from the Orlando Magic for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and 1 first-round pick swap. One of those first-round picks is most likely going to be a Phoenix Suns first-round pick next year in 2026. One of those is the number 16 pick in the draft. Nick, you are our guest. What were your reactions to this trade?
Whoa, that's a lot of Desmond Bane, was my initial reaction. Obviously, Desmond Bane is a great fit, and he provides a lot of what Memphis need. However, I don't love the move totally for them. I feel like they could have gone and gotten a number of better players who were close to as good fits for around the same price that they gave up for Desmond Bane. They paid quite a premium because he wasn't someone that was being actively shopped around already. Whereas there was a number of other names you could have targeted for cheaper. But I am a little bit confused by what they're trying to do. I guess it's quite the offensive scheme is going to be quite unique to what we've seen previously. It's going to be it's going to be very heavy in inverted pick and rolls. I'm going to see a lot of Paolo Banchero running that offense, Franz Wagner running that offense. It's going to be a sort of next man up mentality in terms of who is the primary initiator on this team. And it's going to be really interesting to see. There's no real true clear elite ball handling point guard on this team, which we haven't really seen a team without a clear point guard. As of yet, of course, they can still make more moves, but we haven't really seen a team without a clear point guard have significant success at like an NBA finals level, NBA championship level, right? And that's obviously the goal. If you're making a move like this, that's the goal. And so I'm really intrigued to see what they do. Obviously, they still have Wendell Carter Jr. That's a bit of an issue. I feel like they're trying to make it an upgrade at the center position. From everything I've heard around the league, Mark Williams is
which totally makes sense
for them. So definitely, man, offensive heavy center can get you.
I love what you said about how they're kind of trying to create like in the aggregate. It's like kind of Moneyball rules, a primary initiator, and we have never seen that, but we've also never seen like a team with so much skill and size, but just none of them really rise above that, like, you know, baseline of what you'd expect of like, this guy's going to be setting the table for everybody every game in the high leverage moments. What do you think? What did you think about the trade, James?
I also thought it was a bit of an overpay. I feel like the thing with having like the ace shooter is you almost kind of need 2 of them for, I feel like, the spacing to really take hold. And I feel like the hard part for Orlando is like the core, like Suggs, assuming Suggs is considered part of the core, Banchero and Wagner, just none of them are great shooters. And I feel like if you are, you know, going to be playing a traditional 5 like a Mark Williams, or they're requiring him, then it really is only leaving one spot for a good shooter. So I feel like they almost need to. I think this would be sacrilegious for Orlando fans to hear, but truly do I feel like they might need to move on from one of Wagner or Suggs if they really want to get proper spacing around Paulo, because I feel like right now, to Nick's point, they don't really have that like point guard who's really going to table set the offense. And I feel like Paulo's much more dialed to shoot than like play make at the moment, but that also could be part of the like situation he's in.
I mean, in 2025, just looking at their cap sheet, like forgetting about all of the context, all of how they acquired each of these guys, their cap sheet would kind of tell you the story of the next move, or at least something coming up soon, is one of those big moves to, you know, get off money. Because Bane, you know, he's not like a 1A guy, but he's on a max rookie extension that's not going away. You know, he's there for the next 4 years at that big money. But also, I just feel like it's like a, you know, step on the gas. Jason Tatum's hurt. Like, let's fucking go for it kind of move from the Orlando Magic, which I think I understand the calculus there.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
And look, Bane is still an all-star caliber guy, right? People kind of put him into this off-ball kind of purely a shooter role. I guess that's what they have in mind. But when you're watching the games, man, he played a lot of point guard last year for the Grizzlies, right? When they had that one injured season, and he was relatively successful in it, especially in the pick and roll, which I think, as I said, there's gonna be a very heavy pick and roll, inverted pick and roll offense. And yeah, he was
Especially in the East
before he got hurt last season. And yeah, definitely. And so yeah, while you're giving up a lot for him, he is still of that caliber. While he doesn't have that title to his name necessarily, this is just kind of the price you get for these elite, high floor 3-and-D role players. And I think he fits really well into their system. Great system defender as well.
Yeah, I also, to kind of what Nick was saying earlier, how they could have gotten cheaper. I think alongside this, I'm kind of surprised this past season wasn't the year the Magic tried to just pick up like Luke Kennard or Seth Curry, like pretty one-dimensional players, but guys who can shoot. And I feel like there's a lot of defense insulated on the Magic that you can kind of afford to play guys like that more, especially guys like Luke Kennard who end up just getting benched all the time. It's weird the Magic haven't taken flyers on these like pure shooters.
Grayson Allen, he was right there. We were begging to trade Grayson Allen. But yeah, definitely. Let's kind of change our view here to the Grizzlies side. Whoever wants to pop in first. I mean, a lot of pick equity going out to the Grizzlies side right here. And
yeah,
maybe,
I love it for the Grizz.
Yeah, just like a calculated thing. It's like, we're not close, so we're going to take a mini step back.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for the Grizzlies, I feel like they're kind of coming to grips with Ja, especially with Ja's like health concerns. Like, he's never really playing more than 60 games a year. Is like, I don't know. It just felt like Memphis is this. They're like kind of the team that's great at beating the teams worse than them, and they cannot beat any team better than them. And they're just kind of stuck in a rut. And like, you love Desmond Bane, and he might actually be the most like, you know, friendly player to trade to any other team, just in terms of the way he'd fit on the other 29 teams. I think Jaren might be a little harder to fit on the other teams. Maybe Ja especially would be really hard to fit on a new team. So in a sense, I don't know if he's their singular most valuable asset. I think that'd still be Jaren, but you could see why there's an overpay there for a guy like that.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no real indication from what I've heard that they're trying to make a selling move, but I would understand if they looked into it a little bit, right? We haven't seen any real team success from Ja Morant in a while, and before that, there was obviously none to it, and he's shown, I mean, I know some people buy into it less, some people buy into it a bit more, but the whole, you know, the whole thing gun thing, and the whole sort of mentality he kind of has. It is. With just trying to, I think it's funny, right? But it does feel a bit, it does feel a bit sort of adding fuel to the flame kind of thing, and then he hasn't really been able to do anything with that, right? If he was doing that and then winning, or at least won a playoff series, right, then I would understand it. And obviously it's not a great situation there in Memphis that past season, or even that past 20 games, right? Things kind of collapsed. Taylor Jenkins got fired, new coach. I understand that, but it just all felt in poor taste and in poor timing. And I struggle to build around someone like that. And he's a ball dominant guard who struggles to stretch the floor, right? That one MVP caliber season he was a shooter that year. He was a legitimate shooter. He wasn't Steph Curry, right? But he was a respectable shooter. we haven't seen.
I got
him
a
be
question,
respectable
Nick.
shooter on a high volume since that
What
season.
do you view
And
as
that's
like
why I
kind of
feel
the
like
perfect archetype of a backcourt mate with Ja Morant?
I think like a 6'6", 3-and-D guy is kind
That's
of
a
what
great
you're
question.
looking at. Yeah, with like 2 inches, 3 inches of height
Desmond
more.
Bane's
Because
that
Bane's a
guy.
little short, has the shorter wingspan. So I feel like even if Bane has all the defensive skill, just the body is a little tough between him and Ja. Even though Ja has that verticality element to it, it's just I think you got to have that taller 2 guard next to him.
Someone off ball doesn't need to hold the ball and just kind of has some kind of off ball gravity. Right?
If you could
Some
just
kind of,
swap
like, a good
Ja's
off-ball mover, I could
arms
see that for
and
sure.
Desmond Bane's arms, they would have been like a little bit more perfect of a fit.
That would be hilarious. Trying to see someone get up like that with those arms
T-Rex
and throw it
dunk.
down. Oh man. That's
Yeah, I mean, I think we've pretty much attacked this almost at every angle for the most part. Don't want to get too long-winded. I do think like with the picks, discussion, it's a lot, but I think like any way you cut it, with Orlando being in the East, these picks are going to be a lot less valuable than, taking picks from, a Phoenix Suns, other teams that have the Brooklyn Nets when they went all in via picks. And then I think there is major value in getting off the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope deal. Like, we haven't talked about that at all. But
definitely. The first in the swap that is involved in this deal is purely to get off those two. So you kind of got to think about it as Desmond Bane for 3 first-round picks, and then giving up pick equity to get off those 2 contracts in Cole Anthony and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's a significant salary. That's almost a max
So
contract for the 2 players.
I wasn't too like shaky on the price tag. Like, I think it screams when you're looking at the headline, but like the more you think about it, the more it kind of makes sense. And I love the roll of the dice, trying to go for it. Young guys. Paolo, he's got 1 more year on his rookie deal, so it's kind of like that whole NFL, like capitalize on your quarterback on your rookie deal.
I mean, you gotta give them credit, right? We're always telling these teams to make that move, to take the next step, to go for it. These younger teams, and most don't. Most just continue to take the slow, safe route, and that has varying levels of success. But they've taken the big swing, and I'm really
I think
excited
them
to
versus the
see
Pacers
how
could
it
be a
works
fun
out.
series if the Orlando offense can get better than what were they this last year? Probably in the bottom 5, bottom 8. If they can get up to like 14, 12 maybe, like it could be a fun series.
The push pull of the pace would be crazy.
No,
Up to 12's
I
too
don't see-
deep?
I don't see them
Too-
getting
too
up to
high?
12, man. Have you seen the stat?
I think I heard it haven't been a top
15
20
offense
offense in
20
like
years.
20 years. It's insane. I think since
Top
Dwight
20
was
offense
there.
in like 20 years. It's crazy, man. That team's cursed. They could put Shaq
You think
out
there's
there,
just a
put LeBron
Disney
out there.
curse?
It's not going to be a top 12 offense.
I feel like if they're not done making moves though, they could become a better offensive team, because I feel like what's so hard is just Paulo is just constantly driving into a traffic jam, and I feel like he's settling for so many of these like pull-up twos when I watch a lot of Magic games, and I just feel like it's kind of what I said earlier. They need another. Honestly, they need 2 more spacers. But I just don't think you can just throw Bane out there and be like, "Hey, Bane, you're the only real spacer out here." Because I don't think just having him alone is really going to fix this traffic jam they have. Especially if Bane's doing a lot of on-ball stuff. Because then what? Like, who's spacing for him?
I mean, they got the contracts to cobble together to like pretty much acquire, and not necessarily the pick equity anymore, but like Jonathan Isaac at 15. Mo Wagner, they have a team option at 11. Wendell Carter Jr. 10. Goga 8. Anthony Black 7. Like, there's a lot of variability in like these contracts, what they can put together, the kinds of guys that can go out and target. So
They still do have a couple of picks though, so there is still room to get somebody. Now, whether you want to make that kind of move now, without seeing how this team already looks and kind of locking yourself in for the next 9 years, which is kind of crazy to say, on this core, right? In terms of contractually, right, you'd be over the first apron, maybe the second apron, depending on who you bring in, and you'd have no pick equity to deal and trade to move people in and out. but they do still have room for one more move, one more B-ish move, or 2 little moves, which could make a massive difference, right? You could go out and get another great shooter. You could go out and get a true point guard, right? Or they could target that for the draft. They could use this number 25 pick.
Hey,
well, speaking
that
of
is
the
a
draft-
hell of a segue, Nick.
All right, yeah, let's talk about the draft, because obviously Patrick and I were kind of NBA heads. I don't watch a lot of college basketball. This year I watched more college basketball than I've ever watched in my life because I went to Rutgers and I was excited we actually had prospects for once. And I think the way we're going to do this, we're going to do kind of a mock draft of sorts. We're really just going to go team by team, talk about the possible guys at each selection. Starting with the Dallas Mavericks at pick 1, it seems like there's a 100% chance it's going to be Cooper. And I guess, Nick, where do you kind of see Cooper among the last, like, let's say 7, 8 number 1 overall picks? Where do you kind of have him amongst those guys? Probably behind Wemby for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely second, at least second. In terms of being as a prospect, he's second, right? But with a little bit of revisionist history, if you're looking at how certain guys have turned out, like Anthony Edwards, then you could maybe slip him to third. But at worst, he's third. But as a prospect, he's by far and away the second best prospect. Anthony Edwards.
And then
So, like,
I feel like
obvious.
Levels of
Sorry.
my bad.
I
like
was just gonna say, Cooper.
We're not good at the virtual podcasting as much.
The virtual 3-man weave is definitely a you got to practice a little bit. I was just gonna ask you, like, give me, like, for anyone that hasn't watched any Cooper Flag at all, like, give me just like the elevator pitch on Cooper Flag.
Ooh, he's a 6'9" guy who can do everything, right? Great passing instincts, great connective passer, can be a primary initiator in your offense. He kind of ran point guard, like point forward for the Blue Devils this past season. Incredible defender, really athletic, uses his size well, aggressive, got grown man strength, can throw it down. Great shooter off the ball. Since the turn of the calendar year, he's really improved in that regard. He is a prototypical NBA player, right? When you think of an NBA player and what an NBA player should be able to do, he does it, right? He's kind of in that LeBron, Paolo Banchero kind of mold as a player in terms of just being a two-way, more athletic and more explosive than Paolo, maybe a little bit less smooth and silky in terms of his game, but like that two-way, get downhill, hyper athletic, point forward.
As a rookie,
that's kind of.
Do you think his perimeter game is developed enough to play the 3? Because it seems like he's going to have to play the 3 probably in Dallas.
Yeah, well, he didn't play any 3 this past season for Duke, but I can see it. I mean, he's going to have to, right? He measured out at 6'7", right? So he's going to have to play the 3 wherever he landed. He didn't measure out quite as well as he was touted to be. And yeah, I think the shot's come along enough, and I think he can operate as like a secondary initiator in that offense. And maybe a tertiary / secondary kind of role, depending on the night when Kyrie's back. I can see him probably getting you 18 to 19 a night, for sure, in his rookie year. And
yeah, that would be...
Which is elite. Which is elite for a rookie. And on pretty good efficiency. And he's going to contribute to winning straight away, right? Like, I'm of the opinion that there's maybe 1 to 2 guys every year as rookies actually contribute positively to winning. There aren't many, right? There can be guys that have a good impact, maybe in spot minutes, but overall they don't really have positive impacts. He's going to be one of the few guys that immediately has a positive impact on the floor for playing him over a veteran, for example. Like, think of this guy as coming in as a seasoned third year.
All right, yeah, I'm curious, like, if the jump shot holds up enough with this Dallas, because I'm worried, especially without Kyrie to start the year, that Dallas as a team, even if Flag himself is really impressive, just the skill set kind of he has playing because he's going to have to play the 3. I think it might be a little clunky in Dallas, but I'm excited to see. Like, I'm excited to see what he looks like in the NBA. He's like, yeah.
And he's on a playoff team already, man. Like that's great. Usually have to wait, 4 or 5 guys to watch these elite prospects make the playoffs and see them play anything of consequence. And we're seeing him on a contending teams like that. This is probably, obviously the situation as a whole team and an organization isn't ideal, but purely from a roster standpoint, I'd be very excited about Skipper Flag. This is probably the best result you could get in the lottery. Other
Yeah.
than maybe
Speaking of the Spurs,
depending on who you
number
ask.
2, they
The
are
Spurs would be
supposedly going to be picking Dylan Harper. It seems like the draft really starts at 3 this year. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, I'm not as high on Dylan Harper as other people, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's not going to be taken, or isn't.
So
regarded
you
as the
you
same
said you're
as
not
Dylan
as
Harper.
high on Dylan Harper as other people. Can you just talk me through that, like where general consensus is on Dylan Harper and kind of the drawbacks that you see from him?
Yeah, for sure. Look, if Cooper Flag never reclassified, Dylan Harper would be the consensus number 1 pick, right? He is your average number 1 pick, again, consensus. And that's like we're kind of looking at as a prospect, right? Think of where he was as a prospect at the time. Think of someone on an Anthony Edwards level, or someone maybe
You hear a lot of like
on a
James
Cade
Harden
level.
comparisons when
Right, as
people
a
talk
prospect
about
coming in.
Dylan Harper.
Yeah, I don't think the shooting's quite there, which is my main drawback with him, especially the off the dribble shooting. Sorry, but I can definitely see that.
I mean, hey,
I feel
that's
like
not bad.
That's my personal.
What
comp
stuck
for him.
out to me watching a lot of Rutgers games was, I think, to the point about his shot. It's what's weird about him was I feel like there was no real rhyme or reason about when it felt like he was going to take a jump shot or when he wasn't. It kind of didn't really have a predictable flow of when he was going to pull up. He didn't seem the most confident in his pull-up jumper. I think to me what's surprising is like he would sometimes just drive down the lane off a pick and roll and just dunk it out of nowhere when it seemed like he didn't really have that kind of athletic upside. I guess my worry, having watched him a lot, and I do think he's a super talented scorer. He was the leading freshman scorer this year, right? I want to say he was. I feel like his playmaking isn't quite there, and that's where I'm a little worried about the James Harden comps.
Yeah, and I mean we haven't really seen someone of that archetype have a whole lot of success in the NBA. Obviously there are the exceptions to that rule. Cade Cunningham's a great one, but someone who's like a heavy rim pressure guard, who operates below the rim, heavy in pick and roll, is like a heavy playmaker, but he isn't quite there as a playmaker to be into the heavy playmaker that his archetype requires, if that makes any sense at all, and struggles to shoot the ball particularly off the dribble, and so. Yeah, I don't. We haven't seen much success from that archetype, and I don't. That's why I'm a little bit lower on him. I still have him as a top, 5 pick, top 3 pick. Top 4 pick, in that area, right? And he's arguably. I could still, by the time the draft comes around, I could still have him as my second overall pick, right? For me, 2 through like 5 is very fluid, but. In terms of the consensus, he's definitely looked at number 2.
Yeah, I think the one thing I will say,
just
because it
said
seems
draft
like we're all pretty negative on Harper, his ability just to get to the rim is pretty amazing in my opinion. Like there was no one who could stay in front of him, even without him being this uber Ja Morant level athlete. Like he has that like kind of big physicality, and I wonder like as his game develops if he'll have some of that more like start and stop like a baby Luka-esque, using more about of a D-cell game instead of an A-cell game, but. Yeah, I'm excited. I will say the Rutgers offense was putrid, so I think it makes everyone in it look worse than they are.
Terrible.
Give us a little bit about
very hard to
that glass half full
Humanities.
of Dylan Harper. Why do people love him so much?
Man, people love primary guards who put pressure on the rim. I've noticed that's just, especially in the draft community, and the people that scout as their hobby or their job, right? People love guards who put heavy pressure on the rim because they are really great guards to build around, especially these guys that, again, we haven't seen a whole lot of success from this archetype at the NBA level, but someone who isn't, relying on their athleticism to get to the rim and just flying through the air. That's a high risk.
Hello, John Morant.
High
We were
injury
just talking
chance
about you.
kind of mold of player. We've seen it with John Morant. Yes, exactly. And so I guess the idea of a heavy rim pressure guard that doesn't need to send their body flying every 5 seconds is exciting.
What's his outlook on defense?
Was great. He had a number of games.
I think he could be a great defender.
I mean, he's obviously well sized, has a good wingspan as well.
I think he's a passable defender. I think he's a passable defender. He's got good hands, good like core strength. Is pretty set. Has a good set position. I don't think he's going to be some lockdown defender purely because, even though they might show it at the college level, at the NBA level, it's so much more taxing on offense. That's right. If you're like a primary guy, which he will have to be at the next level. And so purely because of that, I think he's just a systemic.
What do you guys think about his fit on San Antonio? Obviously, that guard room is a little packed.
I hate it, man. I hate it. That's probably the worst fit he could have got at number 2. De'Aaron Fox is obviously a heavy rim pressure guard. De'Aaron Fox is a better shooter than people give him credit for, right? People forget he's taken a massive leap in his shooting. But he's still not some elite shooter off the dribble. And Dylan Harper kind of needs more spacing around him. You're going to have 3 guards who struggle to space the floor, which is a bit of a nightmare scenario between him, Stephon Castle, and De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, you got Wemby, who's probably one of, if not the best, floor spacing bigs ever, shooting bigs ever. But in terms of the backcourt, I just there's next to no spacing, and I feel like that's gonna limit offensively what Wemby can do, right? And I think if you go back 6 months and you told the Spurs you're gonna
I think they're gonna move on from Fox, and I still think the Castle Harper fit is a little weird. With the shooting issues, but also kind of what you're going about with Memphis. Like, you kind of want the 2 guard to be a little bit taller, I guess, between one of those 2 guys. And I don't know if Castle can play the 2. I personally think Harper is going to come in and already be better than Castle as a rookie, just myself. Having watched Castle a bit, I think I was pretty high on Castle, but I do think Harper is going to have a better time getting to the rim than Castle does on a consistent basis. But, I mean, I will see. I feel like they're going to have to trade Fox for a complementary piece, right? I don't
think they're too high on trading Fox, but in terms of what you just said with Dylan Harper being better, I will say there is going to be need for some patience with him. We very rarely, if ever, see a ball dominant pressure guard ever have early success. You have to be patient with these guys. I mean, we just sort of screwed up.
Yes, Scoot. Okay, so I think we went around that pretty well. The draft starts at 3. You kind of indicated that Harper is 4 on your board?
Yeah, Harper is 4 on my board, but he's...
So who are these other guys on this tier? Who should the Sixers be looking at? I mean, I'll just kind of lay it out for you.
All right, so I mean, on this tier overall, kind of between 3 and I'm gonna say 7, everyone's on the same kind of tier. So I'll go through them one by one. First of all is Noah Senge. I'm very high on Senge. He's probably like my highest, the guy I'm highest on it compared to consensus. We've just seen in this past month go on an amazing run in the German BBL. Puts incredible pressure on the rim, gets to the line like very few people.
Super young prospect
ever evaluated
too.
As a prospect. Yes, he's 18, right? Great size, very fluid, great athlete. Gets to the rim very, very well. There is some potential there with the shooting to improve, but he's also a great passer, like a really, really good passer, and I feel like he could be like a secondary initiator.
Someone you can run double big lineups with.
Exactly, and he's very versatile. He can guard sort of 3 through 5, I'd say, because he needs to fill out more, right? He's not quite strong yet, but he has the frame to do it, and so I feel like given 3 years, he can guard 3 through 5, and in some cases 2s, right? People throw around that 1 through 5 guarding stuff way too easily. There's very few guys ever that have been able to legitimately guard 1 through 5, so I'm not going to say 1 through 5, but 3 through 5 is still a very, very still like a great ground amount of coverage. He covers ground really, really well. And yeah, I'm just really excited.
Awesome.
About
Yeah,
him.
I have not heard. I don't know much about Noah Senge, but I keep seeing him inch up and up and up on these boards.
And then who do you have it for on your big board?
Yeah.
Edgecombe. Okay.
VJ Edgecombe. Yes, VJ Edgecombe. He's sorry, no, three. Three is VJ Edgecombe, and then Dylan Harper's 4 for me. VJ Edgecombe is just like a really, really great, high floor with a pretty good ceiling too. Still has some star upside. A great perimeter defender. He measured out quite well at the camp. Ends up being, I think, like 6'3", 6'4", great wingspan. Which I was kind of worried. There was some rumblings that he would end up like 6'2", 6'1.5", around the league, and so that was like, oh wow, his stock is about to plummet after the combine, and I was quite scared for that, but it actually turned out great for him. He's built out well, hyper athletic, has shown for the Bahamas, a year ago he can run point guard. We've seen him run a multitude of roles, and he's happy to fit in what the team needs best, which you love, right? That alongside all the intel we have on him is great. He's like he's a great kid, great leader. But as I said, yeah, like he fits into any role. At high school, he was the guy for the Bahamas. He was acting as like a primary initiator, point guard kind of role. And then this season at the college level, he switched into like a 3-and-D role player kind of role, operating far less on the ball and sort of more so focus on getting out in transition. And that's very Stephon Castle-esque in terms of we saw Stephon Castle play a multitude of different roles based on what teams need, and that showed something that teams really loved in terms of being a point guard, but also being able to play the 2 or the 3 and switch into that kind of role. Teams love that, and it is
because I haven't been able to watch a lot of Edgecombe. Not his full game comp, but athletically, where do you kind of comp him to?
The way he moves is, I hate throwing this around because people throw it over.
Okay, so he's like a hyper athlete.
Very Dwayne Wade-esque.
Hyper shifty. Okay. Okay.
Yes,
wow.
Yeah.
How high are you on his like ball handling ability? Because I know that's kind of like the sticking point of like we can't call him Dwayne Wade because he just can't handle the ball that well. How well is he?
Yeah, he's the primary guy that Dwayne Wade is, as you said. I think that he's probably never going to be like a true point guard or like a point forward in terms of he's never going to be the guy for 82 games running your offense. But I feel like, and this is why I loved his fit to the Hornets so much, is because if you have like a injury-prone guard, he's going to come in and be able to play some spot minutes at point guard for a few games stretch at a time, or 10 games at a time, right? And he's going to be able to do a pretty good job. The ball handling isn't amazing, but his ability to put pressure on the rim and his general sort of passing vision, passing instincts, and passing execution level is pretty good. So I think he's a passable point guard.
So where do you think
but at his best, he's probably unlocked as like
Philly goes with this pick? Do you think it's one of Senge or Edgecombe, or do you think it's somebody else?
Senge isn't in that conversation,
Yeah.
because that's just someone I'm much higher on myself. But from all indications, they're taking VJ third. Ace Bailey might be an option there. We'll get into Ace Bailey in a second. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion around Ace Bailey at the moment. But the leader in the clubhouse.
And do you think kind of almost similar to the Spurs, where the Sixers have Maxey, they have McCain coming back, and now Edgecombe, he's clocking in at 6'3". I think so. He's a bit of a shorter guard. Already got 2 shorter but talented guards. Where do you think that makes Philly want to move on from a McCain, or where do you kind of see Edgecombe fitting in with Maxey?
I think if they take Edgecombe, it's more of a come in and play a role kind of move. Which I don't love. I guess I'd rather just them move the pick. But yeah, Edgecombe's definitely coming in to play more of a role in that at 2 off the bench. Now, I don't like. I love his fit. If he hits his upside, I love his fit with McCain long term, and so potentially, I could see 4 years down the line, or like 3 years in a line when MB gets moved. Maxi could
I
be
love
moved
that.
as
Then
well
you can
if Edgecombe hits that next level, right? Because that fit with McCain is just
being
so
able to
sound.
reset
I
like
love
that
the
would
idea of
be
that.
would be really interesting for the Sixers. Yeah, well, and it's a team that's
they
like
get a
even
whole
right
lineup,
now, like if
between
you're looking
Embiid
at
and
McCain and like Edgecombe
Maxey.
Pops, you got to pay those guys down the road. Like they've set up their cap sheet so well that it's like you're not gonna have to worry about like the repeater tax or anything, because even with how expensive their top end stars are right now, they're not really swimming in that water at all. Did you guys see the rumored Jazz Sixers move off Paul George and swap picks? Did you guys make anything of that?
Yeah, there's a few great options on the Jazz for trade. You could get like a Colin Sexton back, a John Collins back. Just add some more depth rather than having the big name in Paul George. Obviously, you get off that contract and get 2 expiring deals. And you still get the number 5 pick, which you end up with like a Con Knipple, which is amazing. I think that's probably a
Yeah, I
better
feel like if
option
this,
than
I
going
mean,
for
it's so hard to
Anthony
know
Black.
what the Sixers' prognosis is, because if it is really like we're going to trade Paul George, I feel like to me that's an indicator that they still want to be good this year. Because under the assumption they think Paul George is kind of washed. I don't
I mean,
know.
why
It's hard
wouldn't
to
they
it's
wanna
hard to
be
read
good
that
this year?
move. Why wouldn't they want to be good if the East is going to be weak? If they think Joel can play, I don't know. It's like I have no idea what to make of Philadelphia at this point with Embiid's sole situation.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough, but I think if they can run it back with this team and just hope from something from Paul George, like I am of the opinion that when he's healthy, Joel Embiid is the best player on the planet. That's my belief. Especially, man, I remember a couple of years ago, or last year, the run he was on, offensively, it was just I've never seen anything like it, and statistically, there was never anything like it. And I think people again kind of forget how good he was for that half season, 3/4 of a season, and what he did in the playoffs last year. Right, we didn't see much of it this year, and he cops a lot, right? But there are, at worst, as I said, to me he's the best player in the world when he's healthy, when he's fully healthy. But at worst, there are only.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the biggest Joel
Yeah.
Embiid fanboy there ever was, but I don't know if I could ever have him ahead of Jokic at this point. My worry with Embiid is just I don't think we're going to see the 35 averaging more points than minutes guy ever again. And I do think, but I think though for the Sixers, if there's a world, we've talked about this on the pod, where if he can slim down a little bit and maybe lose some of his post-up punch, but in exchange, maybe he can lessen the impact on his knees, and he plays more like his early years self, where he's a little bit more of a rim runner, a little less of like the go-to guy, and he can kind of be healthy and a little bit more agile. I think that could, if Maxey and McCain and the rest of the team is really, and Quentin Grimes is decent again, like I feel like they could be the team that wins the East. Like I don't see why Philly couldn't win the
That's
East if
another goal
Embiid
they
is
have, man.
healthy.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that takes away a lot of what makes Embiid great. I do agree it would be great.
I mean, the
do
important
agree
thing
to
is
see
like
fully
they
healthy
just
if
don't
Embiid,
need
right?
that kind of offense anymore
I
from
agree.
him as well. Like that's kind of something like if he's just like, has, half the amount of ISOs that he did in like his prime years, like maybe you don't even have to make the body transformation. It's just like not setting up, banging bodies, making all those dribble moves. Like, can that lighten the load
play style,
enough?
man.
And relying
Yeah.
on the scoring of like a McCain and a Maxey and who fucking knows, like Con Knipple and Ace Bailey, a VJ Edgecombe,
Yeah. All right. So let's get to. So officially, you're thinking it's Edgecombe here, assuming there's no trade.
Yes. Yeah. for all
My
intentions,
worry,
Ace
if we're
Bailey's
going to talk
playing,
about Ace
it's
now,
pretty much
and I guess we'll
finished.
just go into why I think Ace on the Sixers might be a disaster, because we just did our big pro Embiid talk. But Embiid, I think, is just not a. I mean, he's gotten way better as a passer, but the other funny thing about Embiid is his actual passing ability to throw an accurate pass is pretty bad, and Bailey is one of the worst passers in terms of making accurate, quick passes I've seen.
He's not. I mean, there are some flashes where I've throughout the season where I've been like, oh wow, that's a great read from Ace. But there's a lot more of the what is he doing kind of players from watching him, and so yeah, I'd kind of you need him alongside a bunch of great playmakers, and I mean if they're running a double point guard lineup at all times, there is some room for that, but I don't love the fit again, especially if Paul George is still on the team. And I don't think Ace.
Let's open up
this
this Ace Bailey kind of rabbit hole. This is a guy that, like, coming into the college season, I think was generally regarded as a guy that's going to compete for this second pick in the draft behind Cooper. Potentially, who knows how the season goes, compete for that number one pick. And now we're to a spot where I think a lot of, Intel-based mock drafts have him sliding to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. Nick, can you talk about kind of the journey that we've went on with Ace and what we've learned about him on the way and how we ended up where we are?
Yeah, I think this whole thing is just because he has terrible management, man. Terrible management. He has been declined. He hasn't gone to a single workout yet. Hasn't spoken to any teams. He wants a promise from teams before even going to the workouts in order to go to the workout. And this is a little bit of a behind the scenes thing, but his agent is a little odd in terms of. I remember a bunch of people in the community have reached out to him for interviews and comment on things throughout the year, and he kept trying to charge people for that kind of thing, which I've never seen before, which is a bit dodgy. And I
feel like
the best
talking about Ace the player, he's a really confounding player. I'm curious, Nick, where do you think he is as a pure shooter? Obviously, his shot selection made him take a ton of tough shots, but where do you think he is just as like a pure shooter?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of comparisons to Michael Porter Jr. In terms of that being his floor, which I think is crazy. It's a very high floor for someone like Ace Bailey. But MPJ was a shooter, right? A shooter in high school, in college, at every level. He has been a shooter. Ace Bailey isn't really a shooter, right? You look at his highlight reel, you look at his tape, and you're like, wow, this guy can shoot the ball from every level. But you watch the games, you look at the numbers, and he isn't really, even contextually based on the shots he's taking, he isn't really a shooter, right? Like, you'll see him miss quite a lot of wide open shots when he gets them, right? He isn't some knockdown, unguardable shooter. He is like I'd almost say he's an average shooter.
I don't know. I think he might be a little bit better of a shooter and a little bit worse of a shot creator, if that sounds weird from having watched him, because I feel like right now his dribble game is pretty poor, and he takes a.
Okay, yeah, the dribbling.
Yeah, he's an amazing contested shot taker. He's one of the he's an incredible contested shot taker. But I think my worry, and usually I don't like players whose best skill is taking contested shots and making them. I like guys who can kind of create open shots for themselves and others more. But I mean, I guess my issue is watching him. Like, contextually, I felt like so many Rutgers possessions is him just standing on the right wing, just hoping he gets a turn at the basketball, and then he'd be like, "Oh, it's my turn. I'm gonna go take a shot." But my only worry is sometimes I'm a little worried I'm maybe letting the context make excuses for like what ultimately was like not the greatest season of creating like great looks for everybody around him.
Yeah, no, he sucked in terms of creating actual opportunities for himself and for his team.
I'm hearing his off-the-court decisions are often poor. His off-ball and offense decisions are often poor. Can we talk about his defense a little bit? I'm a guy, I'm not a draft guy. I'm not a college basketball guy. I am looking at like his defensive rating as like a complete, car crash. But he's a guy that seems like he has all the tools to be a good defender. Where does he stand on that side of the ball?
That's it, exactly. Look, I mean, you'll see in some possessions he'll get a block, and then in other possessions he won't even leave the floor, right? You'll see on other possessions he'll be active with his hands and he'll get a steal in the passing lane, and then other possessions he'll just sort of be standing there, right? He has all the tools to do it. It's just about
I think it'd be
putting
hard
it
to
and
judge him
doing
off
it on a
defensive
consistent
rating because
basis.
Rutgers played without a functional center the whole year. So at times he was the best rim protector on the court. Actually, most of the time he was our best rim. Yeah, so I don't think he was
He was
really
playing
playing.
seven
I
games
think
with
he's probably
all of them.
best playing help a lot. I mean, I don't know if his defensive IQ is the best. Where at the NBA level, he's going to be getting a lot of help side blocks and coming around and getting a lot of blocks. But I kind of think he could be a pretty good defensive player,
Yeah.
especially if whatever team he goes to isn't asking him for on-ball primacy and they're kind of telling him like just focus more on like 3-and-D, especially in these early years. But I mean, yeah, it's just tough. He was like he had to do all the rebounding for Rutgers too. Like we just had no bigs all year.
And he improved. See, what I loved about Ace throughout the year was every single game he got better, and you could tangibly see that, which is really, really promising for him as a prospect. And it's generally like a great sign for someone who's going to take a massive leap at the NBA level. But yeah, as you said, his rebounding got really good throughout the year. His shot blocking really improved. And plays that you wouldn't have seen him making at the start of the year, you were seeing him routinely make at the end of the year.
Yeah, and
With-
when he
he's
got
still
hot,
there,
he
there
could
is
put up
room for
40
a sign.
points. He had some great scoring games.
Where do you have Ace on your board? 7. Okay.
So
Me
we're at pick
personally,
4, the Hornets.
Nick is a Hornets fan as well.
let's
we were
go.
talking about this before the episode.
And who do you think
Yes,
they're going to
yeah,
take?
Unfortunately. Man, I was really happy and excited to take VJ all cycle. Because it was just like the obvious, that's who we're going to end up with, but doesn't look like it now. So right now it looks like a choice between Conker Nipple, Ace Bailey.
Can we talk about Khan a little
Um,
bit? Because I feel like in some ways Khan is
and
like
Khan
the
involved?
anti Ace Bailey, at least in this lead up to the draft of like everyone is falling in love with Khan
Yes.
Nipple and everyone is falling out of love with Ace Bailey. One was kind of supposed to be more of a role player coming into like this draft process. One was just had star written all over him. Where do you stand on Khan, Nick?
Man, I love Con. Man, I'm very high on Con. I think he is the best shooter in the draft. But not just in terms of pure shooting ability, in terms of his ability to create shots off the ball, to move, to operate off ball screens. And he has great understanding of systems offensively. His gravity is elite. He knows how to make use of his gravity off the ball. Like, he can do all of this for you without touching the ball, which is just very rare. You don't see guys like this very often in the pre-draft process. Maybe later in their careers they develop this, but I have maybe evaluated 7 or 8 guys ever in my time doing this that are able to do this and use their gravity so well off the ball and actually like create shots off the ball for other people other than themselves without being like,
Who are
involved
some of
in
those
the
guys
role,
that
if
did that well
makes
at
sense.
a young age?
And Jared McCain comes to mind for sure. That's the main guy. I'd have to think about it a bit more. to
Totally,
actually bring him up. They
totally.
wouldn't all be
Where do you
top of the draft guys.
This is a weird name because I don't know if he can
Yeah,
really
um,
create for others that well.
yeah.
But like, where do you like with like a Jordan Hawkins? Because like when obviously I didn't watch a ton of UConn, but like when he came into the NBA and he's playing with the Pelicans, like he is just a great shooter and he's like on pace to set the rookie 3-point record before he just gets benched and is cut off. But in terms of like, where do you kind of stack those two?
I think in terms of pure shooting ability, they're on a similar level in terms of just being knocked down shooters. But Connor's a lot more consistent than Jordan, which is why Jordan ended up getting benched. Jordan was not a consistent shooter, and so you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, so he's gonna shoot 35% from 3, and he's the best shooter in the class. I'm not saying that, right? I think he's gonna be much better than that because he's a lot more consistent as a shooter. Has like a repeatable release, great base, great mechanics overall. I really believe in the shot. I mean, it's hard not to. And then in terms of like, he has a lot more upside than people give him credit for. He's probably never gonna be an all-star, right? But he can be a primary initiator, right? He can fill a multitude of roles, and that's why I love him. He is a Swiss Army knife. And defensively, he people put him into this. They see like a white guy with next to no athleticism, and just assume that he is a one-dimensional guy. He is not one-dimensional at all. He is a pretty good system defender. As I said, he is a great ball handler, great initiator,
stocky
defense, and
too.
of course is a shooter as well. The best shooter. Very stocky. Yeah, he's hard to move. There is some concerns there, obviously, with his lateral movement. So he's never going to be like a point of attack defender. But as I said, he can be like an off-ball system kind of guy. Very active hands. And once he gets downhill, he's probably one of the best transition playmakers.
So I love that fit in Charlotte.
Yeah, man. If it wasn't for VJ.
So moving on to the Jazz, assuming they stay at 5 and don't move up to 3, where the type. So, you know, in this kind of mock we've got Edgecombe at 3, we've got Knuppel then at 4. Let's just hypothetically say. So this is like a Bailey, a Derek Queen,
Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears. I would love to talk about those two guys. I feel like, you know, those kind of explosive young scorer guys is kind of what the Jazz might need right now. I don't. Maybe we hit Trey Johnson first and then we go to Fears.
Yeah, I think it's the pick is almost definitely Trey Johnson. He's just a bucket, right? And I hate throwing that around because it's very simplifying, but he can get his own shot. He can operate off the ball. He's very versatile. He wants to be, I think, in that star kind of mold, in that Cam Thomas kind of mold. I don't think he has the ability to do that. I don't think he's quite that good on the ball. But he can create his own shot in spot circumstances. And he, as I said, he's a great off-ball mover. Can knock down shots. Like, he's probably the second best shooter in this class in terms of like elite prospects. Obviously, you got guys at the back end of the draft, like, you know, your Sears, you got your Peyton Sanfords. Like, these guys at the back end of the draft that are amazing shooters as well. But in terms of like elite talent, top end of the draft, great shooters.
What is Trey? Another one, like athletically, who do you kind of comp him to?
Ooh, I would say like athletically, he moves quite like James Harden.
In terms of like the herky jerkiness, or
I don't know if that's I haven't seen anyone say James Harden. That's kind of I haven't seen anyone really comment on that. But just off the top of my head, I think he moves quite like James Harden, or almost like a shorter Tracy McGrady. And that's not at all a game comp. That's purely like the way he moves and aesthetically. I can see like a very short.
One thing that I found interesting about Trey's just like pure counting stats is for a guy that, you know, I mean, at least I don't know too much about Texas and what they were as a team, but didn't seem like they had a lot of like scoring talent around him.
They weren't very good.
And Trey did not turn over the ball a lot. Like, did you make something of that, or is it just kind of?
Yeah, man, it's funny because all year everyone's read on Trey was like, "Oh, he can't pass, he can't play make," and I was trying to tell people like there is some playmaker in there. He's very efficient with the ball in his hands, and now we're starting to see people like switch almost completely to him being like a really good playmaker, which I think is quite funny over the course of like the last 12 months, and based on the same film as well. I guess the consensus changed once like some of the bigger names start saying that people start buying into it a bit more. But he's definitely a good passer and someone who can operate like a secondary initiator.
Sometimes with guards, my only worry when the turnovers are so low, but also the assists per games are low, and it's, you know, it's kind of hard for me as a primarily NBA guy to contextualize stats because obviously the games are shorter. But I guess I worry when you have like relatively low turnovers and assists. It's almost like, are you not taking enough risky like passes into the paint? Are you not making enough creative passes? And that kind of just gives you that like stable point guard label versus like an actual kind of upper level passer.
Trey isn't like a big playmaker, like someone that you'll see and be like, wow, right? He's kind of just a get it done, kind of efficient. He's gonna be more of a secondary initiator. He's never gonna make.
I guess a big reason why I took note of that is just because he has a pretty high usage rate. And for a guy that's not known as like a
Yeah.
facilitator to also not turn over the ball is like definitely preferable.
Oh yeah.
I think in terms of the way he plays at the college level and his scouting report now, and the way he plays at the NBA level is gonna be like totally different, right? Like a complete switch. He's not gonna be on the ball really all that much. Not gonna have a very high usage rate at all. And it's purely gonna be
So
like
a guy with an
a
even
movement
higher
shooter.
usage rate than Trey Johnson was Jeremiah Fears. I feel like Jeremiah Fears is one of the most, hot or cold prospects in this draft. Super young point guard out of Oklahoma. Where do you stand on the Jeremiah Fears spectrum?
Yeah, man. Look, as you said, he reclassified. He's like Cooper Flag. So he's actually playing up a year. He should still be in high school, right? And he led Oklahoma through March Madness, which is crazy. But he has some of the best offensive tape I've watched from this class. In terms of just being able to do everything, man. He can create shots on the ball. He can move off the ball and knock down shots off the catch. He can get into the rim. He can get to a floater. He can throw it down. He can hit, step back threes. He just does kind of everything offensively in terms of his bag, and that's really really impressive. The defense isn't great, and the playmaking isn't great for someone of his size and like a lead guard. I think he's a solid pick and roll playmaker, but in terms of every other kind of playmaking, he's pretty.
What was his
Full on
team
par.
context?
For like a small guard. He was tasked with a lot, offensively.
In the
There
best
wasn't a lot of-
conference
a lot of help on the ball at Oklahoma.
in the country.
Yes, in the SEC.
Yeah, I only ask because
Yes.
with a lot of these guys who I haven't watched and I see stats, it's like it's just so much like, well, is he taking a ton of hard shots because he's playing on not so great a team? So it's always good to kind of contextualize what some of these guys were playing, and I feel like
I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the most amazing shot selection. He's very much like a microwave kind of guy. I could see him coming
So,
on the bench next season for a team
Utah,
just getting
where
minutes.
would you go? Would you go Ace? Would you go Trey Johnson, or would you go Fears or someone else?
I would go Trey Hill.
Makes
all right, that brings us to the Wizards, the poor Wizards who dropped all the way to 6. I feel so bad for them. This could be an ace landing spot. Could this be a Derek Queen? Could this be
Malawatch.
somebody else? Yeah.
Yeah, man, I love Malawach's fit with this team. I'm really excited about the idea of like a team with Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, and Kyle Malawach defensively. Like that much athleticism, that much length, that much ground coverage on one team. It would just I've been thinking about it all year. If they fell, that's like
Be
my-
kind of like
my
a baby
favorite
version
Malawach.
of like the Timberwolves from last year, just like so much length and shooting, except like you've got a gassed up, defensive guy instead of Cat.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like it's gonna be like something we haven't really seen before, right? Because these are two unicorn 7 foot plus prospects, both of whom have shooting upside, right? And both of whom can space the floor. I don't think we would have ever seen like a front court quite.
So
like
you
it.
buy
Which is why I'm
Malawach
so excited by the idea. Of it.
developing into a shooter?
Shooter, I wouldn't say, but like respectable. You have to guard.
I mean, that would be huge. Hey, like any above 7-footer that can shoot like that, I feel like you don't even need to shoot like, a high volume of shots. Like if you're
Exactly. And I think that puts that slides Alex Sarr back down to the 4. He did play a lot of 4 this past season, but I guess long term he was supposed to come into that 5 kind of role. I think that permanently puts him to that 4 position, which will take a lot of pressure off him as like a pick and roll screen setter guy, which he's really struggled with, and allow him to play more in the flow of his own game, rather than just being involved in a bunch of actions for other players. And yeah, I mean, like the rim protection, the ground coverage, the switchability between those two bigs, and then having Bilal Coulibaly
If
at the 3.
Sar was in
Really,
this draft,
really
would he
exciting.
go ahead of Malawatch or would he go behind Malawatch? Okay. So we're still at the part of this draft
Pretty
where a
good
lot of
line
these guys are going 1 or 2 in last year's
He would
draft.
be it. I don't know. I feel like that's more sort of an archetype thing with Malawaj. I think, especially in the class like last year, everyone was kind of searching for that unicorn, that high upside prospect because there wasn't really any, like anyone with like an all NBA upside, and so I feel like a 7-footer with that kind of ground coverage and that kind of shooting upside, people would have convinced themselves as the number one overall pick. I don't think Connor Knipple would have gone first, for example. A lot of this is about what teams can convince themselves is worth a first overall pick on as well.
Yeah,
It's
that
not
makes
just
sense.
rankings, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like you're pretty locked in on
and
Malawach
yeah, you
going to
Derek-
going to
Derek Queen.
Washington.
No,
Okay.
I'd love
Yeah,
that to be the pick,
makes
but I
sense.
think realistically it's going to be Ace Bailey. Just the falling star. They need something.
I will say, as a Rutgers alum,
I think
I'm
it's
kind of
gonna
really
fly over
hoping Ace can go to one of these more like established organizations. I would be like kind of afraid of him landing at the Wizards or the Pelicans. Like, I don't really want that for him, but yeah, I don't.
You should be, man. That's scary. He needs like a legit like leadership and a developed core around him to kind of keep him in line. He hasn't really had any major coaching. Something I've noticed about his circle is quite a lot of sort of yes men kind of thing. He doesn't really have anyone in his corner telling him what issues he has and what's wrong with his game. Again, I go back to his agent. There's a lot of issues with his agent. Man, I'm not a big fan of his agent at all.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, I think
some
he
places
needs
have
to
Derek
go
Queen going here. Can you talk to us about Queen and what you like and don't like about him?
yeah, I'm not high on Queen at all. The consensus on him is like lottery. I'm like high lottery. I'm kind of in like late first round, second round on him. I just don't think the shooting's never gonna be there, right? The way he plays and the way he needs to play, and his archetype to be successful, he's gonna need to be like an offensive hub. And I just don't think he's good enough to be an offensive hub. And if he's not an offensive hub, then what is he? Because he's not a great defender. He's slow, doesn't shoot the ball, and he's never going to be able to shoot the ball. I don't think. Doesn't have the touch for it. He's just a solid passer. And I can't really say there's any other standout skills.
I feel like me and you
I'm
probably
very
come from the
wrong
same
on
school,
Queen.
given how high you are of Joel Embiid. I don't like centers under the height of 6'10". Unless you're like Bam Adebayo and you're the ultimate Swiss Army
Yeah,
knife.
Dwight Howard.
I don't like short centers. I've never liked that as an archetype. Yeah.
Especially ones that can't defend. Like he's
If he-
already not a good defender, and he can't.
If he
face
could
the
end up
ball.
on the Nuggets,
Bam at least
obviously
has,
he
like, some
probably
shooting
won't,
upside.
given unless the mocks are all very wrong. If he ends up on the Nuggets and gets 2 years of Jokic school, do you think he's got anything as a backup hub or no?
See, I don't think that's a real thing. I don't think you can be a backup hub. You have to have too much of the offense circled around. That's why I'm so low. If he was like, if I legitimately believe he could be like a backup hub, and that's a real thing, I'd have him at the back end of my lottery because like it's just having a dependable, high floor.
So do you have like
Big.
a guy like Danny Wolf?
that's a great stuff.
Is he in
Right.
that discussion for you?
I'm quite low on Wolf as well. He's in like around like 30 for me. I just don't. He's very turnover prone. I'm not a big fan of those guards in big men's bodies at all. They very rarely turn out well. Like you see a guy like Niles Reed and the success he's had, but you don't. Like I can't even really name a whole lot of failures because they are just. They're just,
I
they
mean,
just
Dragon
stay-
Bender,
they don't really see a whole
Marquise
lot of
Chris, you know,
These,
like
high usage big-
total guys like that.
guards. Yeah. That archetype is
What
very,
about
very, very
there's
realistic.
one guy that I've been kind of falling in love with? Just everything that I've heard, my little YouTube watches is Colin Murray Boyle. Where do you stand on him as just like a defensive specialist? Of course, everyone's gonna always say Draymond Green. Obviously, that's a long ways off. But where do you stand on a guy like that?
He's another guy that I'm quite low on. And I have around 25. He's a great defender, for sure. But the way he's built, the way he is schematically, he's going to need to be like a 4-5. And I don't see him playing a lot of 4 because he can't shoot the ball at all. And so if you're stuck playing a 6-7 center, suddenly, we haven't seen. There's maybe one example in recent history of a 6-7 center, and that's Draymond Green. And as you just said, he is a long way from Draymond Green offensively, and so there isn't any kind of precedent to say that he can be successful at this next level.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about short centers. I feel like if there ever will be a next Draymond Green, because truly there's no guarantee that will ever happen, it's not going to be a guy who gets drafted as a center. It'll be a guy who gets drafted as a 4 who ends up being able to play that. But, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't think we ever will see another Draymond Green, ever. Right? There's this archetype of someone who can be like the second most important guy on a team offensively, right, without needing to score the ball, but also not being like a playmaker, right? Someone who's a great screen setter and organizes the offense, initiates the offense and the defense, defensive leader, defensive player of the year caliber guy who also
he's a one of a kind
like a shooter. Like that's such a weird.
So as we've hit the hour mark, I'm just gonna start peppering you with players that I want to hear your take on. So we've talked about the small, we've talked about the slow. What about a guy that is a big man that has been really rocketing up boards recently in Jan Behringer? Where do you stand on him? Giant person.
Yeah, I think he's just a really solid, potentially backup big. I don't think he's in this lottery area at all. I think realistically, he's probably getting taken like around 25 to 30 to 35. I haven't really seen.
Can you maybe go over some of the international guys? Obviously, you talked about Asenge, but like at the beginning of this draft year, no one. Let's try to say this guy's name. Troyor. I don't know if I can get that one. But he is like free falling from where he was like 9 months ago. Like, what do you think about him and maybe some other international guys in this draft that maybe some of us haven't heard of?
You look at like potential first overall picks at the start of the year. It was Cooper, it was Dylan Harper, it was Ace, and it was Nolan Traore, right? And so I remember about 18 months ago at the ANGT youth tournament, in I think it was Budapest. Maybe I remember he dropped like 50 points in like a semi-final game, which was just crazy. I remember watching that game and being like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" Right? Just in terms of like a great scorer, off the dribble, great creator, can play make a fair bit. He's I think someone that teams should probably look to target in that 20 to 28, 29 range. I think realistically, he's a great pickup for a team that needs point guard play. There's still a lot of upside there, obviously, considering where he was at the start of the year. He had like all NBA upside, and I still believe there's some of that in there. But at worst, I think he can probably be a solid backup point guard, a solid third string point guard, which.
Two other like bigger ball handlers that I think are really interesting is Kaspers Yakashonitz and Yegor Demin. Who are you higher on between the two of them? What do you think the realistic expectations are for those two guys?
Yeah, I'm quite high on Yakashonitz, man. I think he's like a Halliburton light. Now, not in like the NBA Finals, All NBA Halliburton in terms of very heavy on the light, right? In terms of just like play style and impact, he's like a Halliburton.
Yeah.
Starting point guard kind of level, if that makes any sense. I'm better in the shooting. There is a lot of concern put into his turnovers. I'm not quite as big on that. He's a young guard. And people are putting a lot of emphasis on the last few games of the season where he collapsed fully. And he had like, I think even his last game he had like 8 turnovers. But people are forgetting what he did throughout the course of the rest of the year, where he was like a top 5 pick. And I'm quite high on him for sure. And I think he operates quite well off the
I like
ball
how he forecasts
so
as
he's
a rebounder as well. I'm always a sucker for like guards that just have a nose for the ball, are able to
Guards are
rebound.
gonna rebound.
Yeah.
What about
get
Demin?
transition started?
Man, Devin, people slam his shooting quite a bit. I think the shooting is going to be very good. He's been great at these level. One of my great friends in the industry, Rafael Zamorano, he's like the guy for the youth basketball in Spain, and he's been watching Diego since he was like 8 or 9 years old, and at every single level, Diego has been the best shooter on the floor. And we've seen some struggles this year, but I do believe that he is still an elite shooter. Obviously, being a jumbo playmaker as well, that's really interesting, and his ceiling is extremely high. His ceiling is kind of like, not stylistically, but what Tyrese Halliburton's doing right now, Jaeger Demon could do. But he's also
Talk
very
about that floor a
low
little
floor,
bit.
good
Like,
floor out of the
what's
league.
the biggest, frightening points?
Just potentially not developing as a playmaker. He's quite weak as well, so defensively he could struggle. If he can get like 10 to 15% more physical though, I could see him, if the point guard thing doesn't work out, I could see him being tried out as like a 3 and going into that kind of like Boris Diaw kind of role. That's my comp for him actually, Boris Diaw. Great playmaker, can shoot the ball, not amazing defensively. And that's obviously...
Hey, sign me up though.
Hey,
like,
could this
sounds
be
good.
our backup hub? I mean, 6'8", only 200 pounds though. Is this?
Definitely, man.
I
It's
think this is
interesting.
maybe
It's
one of those
interesting prospect, for
prospects
sure.
that it's so hard, obviously, because I feel like the way we all, it's so hard to project what a guy will be when it's a new archetype. But like, is this the type of guy where you could see his role maybe being like he's catching the ball at the elbow and being like a high-low passer as like a 3-4 man, or no?
Nah, not at all. I think he's like either a primary initiator or someone.
All right, so maybe just give us like your favorite diamond in the rough, and then maybe we've went around this NBA draft as much as we can in one episode.
Oh man, that's interesting. Someone I'm quite high on is like a. Oh man, my guy was all year has been Nicolas Dallas, and he just pulled out of the draft. He was that was always my go-to for this question. Now I've got to think about it a bit more. Ben Henshaw. These guys both just pulled out of the draft. Steve Settle the third. He's potentially a late second round pick. Someone to get picked up on like an Exhibit 10. He's a 6'11" guy with guard skills, shoots the ball, great defender. He's an amazing shooter, by the way. Slots into that 4 role. I could see him, like, he is, consensus-wise, he's, like, undrafted to maybe, like, 55 through 60, potentially. He's getting interest there. But he's, like...
I have a question. This is actually about
I'm
last
very
year's
high on
draft, but we haven't seen this guy yet, so I'm kind of curious what your take is. What do you think about Nikola Topic coming back to play for the Thunder next season, and how high on you or how low were you on him last year?
Yeah, last year, man, he was the highest upside guy in the class, right? He was the guy with all NBA upside. And
No,
can you guys
you're
hear
good.
that? It's raining quite heavily. Is that impacting my mic at all? Okay, sorry, just making sure. But great playmaker. There were some shooting issues, but I believed in the shot. However, I have heard that
Yeah,
his shot
he was
is
really strange
terrible.
last year.
They've rebuilt his shot. The Thunder have tried to like fully rebuild his shot, and it's come out significantly worse for it. Now obviously there's still some time before the season. Maybe that turns around. Maybe it's a new corner, but from what I've heard, they've ruined his shot.
That's I guess that's disheartening to hear. I thought he was always a weird prospect because usually the guys with the shorter wingspans tend to project as better shooters and worse finishers, and he was like the weird inverse of that. I guess if his shot is going to be very bad, like, and obviously I'm not the most well versed in Euroball, like where would he stack up with like a Ricky Rubio, a guy who has got great playmaking instincts, can finish, but maybe doesn't have the greatest shot? Or is that a little lofty at this point?
I think that's a great outcome for Topic. I don't think it's super realistic, man. Speaking of Ricky Rubio, though, there was one guy in last year's class who I was like uber high on. compared to the consensus. He was like number 4 to 6 on my board throughout the year. And he still has a chance. I don't think he's even going to end up making the NBA. But Juan Nunes, the Spurs have his rights. And unfortunately, I'm not sure how public this is and how much trouble I'll get in for saying it, but he refused to come over to the NBA because he ended up dating the president of Barcelona's daughter. And so he made a promise to go over there and play for them, and then ended up behind probably the deepest guard rotation in Europe and didn't get a whole lot of tick. And so he was someone that could have gotten an NBA tick last season, being a really good rookie, and he's probably not ever going to come.
Yeah, I mean,
but if he does, that's like a Ricky Rubio type guy, the best playmaker I ever watched at any level.
We'll see if
NBA.
he gets
I've never seen
tacked
playmaker
on
like
in a
this.
future Giannis or Kevin Durant, Jaylen Brown trade, freed up a little bit.
Man, I was jumping when people get next.
Oh, we were all over that Wemby's rookie year, especially when people had Chet ahead of him in the Rookie of the Year race. Me and Patrick were just like, Wemby is playing with me and Patrick out there. They had Sohan at point guard. You guys remember that? That was ridiculous.
That was a real thing that happened.
Man.
Okay. James, what do you want to jump into?
Yeah, he's not coming over.
I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about with the draft?
I mean, we hit a lot of players. I guess, I'm looking at my notes. I did have 2 other people that I really did want to ask you about, and they're kind of in that, like, the wing, the rarest archetype, the one that we all want. And it's Carter Bryant and who was it? Oh, and Cedric Coward. Super, like, everyone in the draft world is always talking about them recently. Maybe just give us, like, quick rundown of those 2 guys.
Right. With Carter Bryant, he's definitely like more of a theoretical prospect. We didn't see a whole lot of production on his end at the Kawhi at the
He
college
wishes.
level. Kawhi level. He's kind of a great defensive, like 3-and-D prospect. Some high upside there. I can see some, like, there's a lot of Trey Murphy in his game, if that makes sense. Moves well off the ball, great cutter, great roller to the rim. Operates well out of that dunker's spot. He's an interesting guy because we didn't see a whole lot of on-ball tick for him at the college level. So yeah, I think he's definitely someone that's risen mostly based on his, like, intel in terms of, like, his personality and how he holds himself as, like, a person and as a young player has really impressed a lot of teams. And that's kind of what the majority of his rise has been.
Yeah.
More so than.
And then Cedric Coward, another guy that has risen a lot recently. What do you put that to?
Yeah, man, great size for a wing. Really athletic. Good shooter. Gets inside pretty well. Puts good pressure on the rim. Great interior scoring. A high IQ guy. Passes the ball really, really well. And the main thing for me is his defense. Super versatile, great lateral quickness, and is able to, like, sort of stay in front of just about anybody on the ball. Very energetic and high motor. Now, we haven't really seen him at a high level of competition ever. He started off at JUCO and then D3, and now he ends up signing for Duke, right? And now he's in the NBA draft and potentially going to the lottery. But we haven't really seen him against any super elite competition yet. Obviously, him being at Washington State for this past season, and then previously he was at D2 and D3, and yeah, it's kind of a bit of a flyer. Like, and these are both very true, like, theoretical guys. And obviously Cedric Coward is a lot older, and I don't love guys that are older and are still theoretical. But I think Cedric Coward is the exception, and I have him in my lottery. He's 14th on my board.
Awesome. All right, Patrick, should we get to best take, worst take?
Yeah, best take, worst take, the part of the program where we give our best and our worst take from the last 7 days. Nick, you're our guest. Who are you giving your best take award to this week?
This is less of a best worst take and more of just slamming someone in the media. Seeing Stephen A. Smith playing solo.
Yeah,
was fun.
yeah. And he's gonna go on and talk about the
me
game
off.
the next day on the show. It's insane.
Like I don't that really infuriated me. Just because he's on $100 million contract. And
Yeah, the worst thing is it doesn't
something
even
again.
surprise you. It is just so
I love
on
that
brand
kind of
for
thing.
him. And his answer to it is like, if you
No.
don't like it, you can you could shove it up your ass. Like that's basically his whole answer to that.
Well, my worst take is actually going to go to. I guess we could have a side conversation about Adam Silver, but my worst take is going to Adam Silver, who I feel like has had like a big fall from grace since he first became commissioner. But he said they don't realize. He's talking about the NBA Finals decals. They don't realize they went away a decade ago. They were slippery. We're adding them back virtually. I don't recall there ever being a big slipping incident with the NBA Finals decals that have gone missing and everybody wants back.
I mean, to be fair, you kind of want to act on that before it happens, but I don't see how it. Maybe I'm.
We must have the technology to create decals that aren't
Non-slippery
sticky.
decals. You know, I went back and I watched. I just typed in like 2009 finals, and I watched like 10 minutes of Lakers Magic, and I noticed there's also a Magic logo decal just on the court that no one seemed to slip on. So whatever the Magic's logo is made out of, surely the finals logo can be made out of. Because I think my problem with the virtual stuff is. Do you guys remember the Bucks had like these cool cream colored jerseys and the NBA just made them stop wearing it because it messed with the advertisers? Like, that's so lame.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it was a little bit.
The Cream City? Yeah, that's what we want.
I want the goofiness. I feel like
I
teams
think
should have the
that's
right
part
to
of
do
it.
that. But no, I feel like Adam Silver's made a lot of comments this offseason about like, oh, we're going to try to get the media full of guys who actually like basketball. But like, are there any actionable steps toward
Yeah,
that?
I'm
Like,
really excited
like
about
it looks like the NBA and TNT's just headed to ESPN, and we
Yes.
know like Shaq doesn't watch. Like,
I think also with CBS and NBC, they've really stepped up their coverage, and they got a lot of guys that really love the game basketball and love to talk about basketball. And I think the fact that, and again, this is being bought into way too much, and I hate to feed into that. And he's not going to be on the show a whole lot, but I think the idea of bringing on Michael Jordan is he's not going to go on there to fuck around. He's not going to go on there to have a laugh and crack funny jokes. He's a pretty serious guy. I think that kind of is very indicative of the kind of coverage they're trying to provide. So it might not be as fun and jump off it might not have all the viral clips the same way NBA on TNT did. But in terms of game-to-game coverage, it's
Yeah,
gonna
and
be
I think,
much
you know,
better.
NBC,
I'm really looking
they
forward to it.
do kind of the best, I would say, from an NFL standpoint, or if not the best, a very good job on Sunday Night Football. They do a really good job on their Notre Dame coverage, so I'm very optimistic that we're gonna get a really great product from NBC.
what is your worst take, Patrick?
My worst take, we kind of already went over it, but my worst take was just going to Ace Bailey and Ace Bailey's team of not doing any workouts or interviews, and just like, no matter how you cut it, I think there's a way to go about doing this kind of like avoiding workout that doesn't make you look like a complete like fuck up and kind of like you just don't know what you're doing. How do you do it? Yeah.
I don't want to say it.
Hey guys, at this point in the podcast, unfortunately, something happened and we lost the rest of Nick's audio. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I know we did. Was anyways longer than most podcasts we do. So Hope you guys enjoy the NBA Finals. Enjoy Game 7. What an amazing Game 6. And another huge thank you to Nick Thomas of Draftstack. All of his information is going to be below listed. Make sure to blow him up on YouTube, blow him up on X. And thank you guys so much for listening. My pinky, and this, along with just the Kevin Durant media news cycle that I just cannot get my brain out of. Nick, I don't know if you know, but I am a diehard, born and raised Phoenix Suns fan. It's been a tough week. I need closure on this Kevin Durant thing. My expectations are in the gutter, and now I'm crippled as well. So I am having a shooting slump right now, James and Nick.
Nick, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Oh no. Nick, what's the scouting? What kind of player are you? How would you evaluate yourself? What kind of player are you? Hell yeah, that's my kind of guy.
Not in that clip.
It happens to the best of us. It only happens to people that are really defending. James, can you save us from a triple shooting slump?
I was gonna say I'm on a slump, but I've had a mixed week. I'll get the slump part out of the way. I am doing the works of a brand deal with a TV for my YouTube channel, TV company, and unfortunately, it seems like the movers might have damaged it. So I have a 100-inch TV in my living room that doesn't work.
Nice,
which is brutal. And now it's making me sad because I bought a new TV stand for it, and I'm realizing the TV stand's too small. So it's just like, okay, this whole situation's got to get figured out. It is really depressing, though. I keep walking past it. It's just this monstrosity sitting in my living room. It looks so cool, but I can't use it. I know I've had all these plans to do stuff with it, and I haven't been able to. Honestly, I would say I've on more of a slump, but basketball hot streak, to tie it back to the I guess the main point of the podcast. The Lakers got bought by TWG, who I am excited for the Lakers to no longer operate like they're I mean, they're operating like a small market team for the last 20 years, and they're finally going to spend more money. I'm excited.
For the first time ever, I've been thankful for the terrible CBA, because at least it might hamstring the Lakers from all this money. from a historical standpoint, it is kind of a bummer for sure.
It's a bummer, but like they let Alex Caruso go. That was a total like that's like a total like what team? Like the Clippers would not have done that. Steve Ballmer would not have let that happen.
I'm okay with them having the money, but if they're gonna let a bus child continue to run the Lakers with the money, I think they should put Jim Buss back in there.
No, they can't. They can't get rid of Pelinka. He's on the hot streak of all hot streaks. Like, he's on such a heater right now. They can't let him go.
One thing I think will be interesting is like, do we get finally a Jerry Buss statue in the like concourse of statues that is right out of Staples Center? I think that would be pretty cool. One 100%.
All right, well, we'll
All
wrap
right.
it from there. Thank you to Nick. Nick's website, it's the Draftstack. Thank you.
All right, everybody. See you next time.
Peace. Sweet.